Look, I've spoken before to this smart young man from Victoria. He's now a senator, which I don't particularly like. I wish he was in the House of Representatives. James Paterson, very bright, Liberal senator. We need about 100 of him in the Parliament. Remember yesterday I spoke to Gideon Rosner from the Institute of Public Affairs, who was saying that 2018 should be the year to get rid of burdensome and silly regulation, which Mark was just talking about there in relation to Trump. And he told us, Gideon, yesterday, that unnecessary regulation is costing our economy $176 billion a year. Trump's got rid of stacks of this stuff in America. And without red tape, he said, the Australian economy would be 11% larger, and annually the average household would be nearly $20,000 a year better off. But according to the World Economic Forum, we rank 80th in the world when it comes to the burden of regulation. 80th. America's 12th. He also made the point that as a result, business investment as a percentage of gross domestic product is lower than it was when Gough Whitlam was Prime Minister. That our rate of entrepreneurial growth ranks Australia dead last amongst the 32 countries of the OECD. Regulation, red tape. Well, opening a restaurant in New South Wales requires the completion of 48 separate forms and the acquisition of 72 licences. Well, this brilliant young man, wonderful mind, this fellow James Paterson, he says it should also be the year of the tax cut. James, good morning.
Good morning, Alan.
Can we afford a tax cut? How do we afford it?
The good news is, Alan, we can afford a tax cut because finally the budget is returning to surplus. It's forecast to get there by 2021.
Not too sure about that, but anyway.
Well, we hope it's going to get there. And
it is hope, yeah.
In our room to start returning some of that money to Australian taxpayers.
I mean, but your point is this, isn't it? Your point is, James, that once you get to 180,000, we're paying 47 cents in the dollar on every cent. Every cent, 47 cents. That means after 180,000, you're working January, February, March, April, May and most of June before you get to keep a cent.
That's right, Alan, and that top income tax rate has been the same as most of our income tax rates for more than a decade now, because the last Treasurer to have substantial income tax cuts was Peter Costello in his May 2007 budget. So it's been more than a decade since there's been substantial tax relief for Australians.
Yeah, but you had Bill Shorten yesterday at the National Press Club virtually threatening to revoke the company tax cuts, and yet amongst the OECD, our top income tax, forget company tax, is third highest. New Zealand's top rate's 33, Singapore 22, Hong Kong 17, we're 47, and it cuts in at 2.2 times the average wage, whereas, as you've said, the top rate in America doesn't kick in until you're what? 8 times the average wage, France 14 times the average wage, Australia 2.2. That's what you're talking about.
Exactly, Alan. We haven't even got Bill Shorten over the line yet on company tax cuts, let alone personal income tax cuts, but just as our company tax is high and uncompetitive and holding our country back, I think our personal income tax rates are too high and holding our country back, and they're not rewarding people for the effort that they put in. They're not rewarding them for being entrepreneurs. They're not rewarding them for taking risks, and that's a real problem for Australia.
See, one of the great things you do, and I'm not sort of, buttering you up here, but you're young and you've got brains and you've got energy, and you're talking in simple language. I noticed you said the other day that reward for effort should be at the heart of our tax system, not discouraged by it. How can there be reward for effort when you're talking about tax rates of 47 cents in the dollar, or in a couple of hours' time, Donald Trump's going to tell us that he's cut the company tax rate to 21%, and you got Bill Shorten still trying to hang on to 30% in Australia?
That's right, Alan. If your effort of putting in more work, taking risks of making investments or starting a business is going to be penalised by a substantially higher tax rate, then a lot of Australians will say don't bother. Or if they do want to bother, they might go and bother elsewhere overseas. They might try it in America or New Zealand, where they're going to be rewarded better for that effort. So
but we're not talking about rich people, are we? I mean, someone on 87,000, someone thinks, I've got to 87 grand, $87,000. Now, in today's day and age, not a lot of dough. And yet, after 87,000, every dollar you earn is taxed at 37 cents. Just hand over 37 cents in the dollar. So that is, you're working virtually all January, all February, all March and most of April. You get nothing, then you start to keep a quid.
That's spot on, Alan. And in a big city like Sydney or Melbourne, a salary of $87,000 a year is not much for a young family.
Well, now listen, you're going out to the joint party meeting. Who's going to listen to James Paterson?
Well, the good news is, Alan, that the Prime Minister gets this, the Treasurer gets this, and they're very determined to do.
Right, so we've got to make sure the public gets it.
So, exactly.
You've got to sell it. You've got to sell it.
Ultimately, we're going to have to convince the Parliament. We're going to have to get these through the Parliament. We have to convince Bill Shorten, who's been dragging his feet on company tax, and I hate to see what he's going to try and do. We'll try and return some money to the Australian people.
Good on you. You keep in there. We'll keep talking to you.
Thanks, Alan.
There he is, a young fellow from Victoria, Senator James Paterson.